So this is Nothing Media Conversations. I'm here with Art PINSOF. Hey, Art.
Hey, Leonard.
Yeah, I was just, yeah, I think this is just what I was thinking is maybe you can share. Because in nothing in non-duality, there's a lot of whether we call it enlightenment or awakening, or some people don't really want to attach the label to that. They call it the shift. But I was wondering if you also call it the shift. Did it happen to you, or how long have you been seeking, or are you still in that seeking space until now?
Yeah, I mean, those are all questions that I feel like, well, yeah, those are all questions that I feel like I could answer different ways. Like, has there been a shift for me? I think if there's one big shift, final shift, I mean, I don't expect that to happen for me or for anyone. But there are stories of that happening for people, so that could happen. But no, for me, it's just been a gradual changing of my perspective, which I would say would be the same as any other human, even people who have no interest in non-duality or spirituality. Like, everyone is always shifting from one state to another.
Yeah. It's like the way the way I see it. It's like we're all in a dream, and it doesn't matter if you're aware of it or not, because you're still inside the dream. There's no specialness if you're interested with this or that, or if you're. This is the way I see it too. Like, I really like the way you said it. Like, every perspective, the way the way it registered to me is every human being's perspective is valid. Every subjective reality is valid as it is. Like, it doesn't matter if you get it's just perception. I mean, it's just the way you see life and the way you live it. And the meaning of life is the meaning you give it. It doesn't matter if you go through whatever shift they're talking about, or if you're like whatever you're drawn to. I This is what I when I attend your meetings. This is what I always pick up. Like, whatever you're drawn to, you will do whatever like you're supposed to, right?
Yeah. So wait, yeah, the meeting. What I like about, I guess we should let people know about the meetings that I host.
Mhm.
So I host a meeting. It's like a private Zoom meeting.
Twice a week, right?
Twice a week. It's Wednesdays and Sundays. And if anyone wants information, they could just, yeah, message me on Facebook at Art Pinsoff. Find me on there. Um, but yeah, and what I like about the meetings that I host is that, there's no, like, I'm the host of the meeting, and it has this flavor of whatever my taste is as a personality. But it's also, what makes it so beautiful is that it's a collection of different people all sharing their perspectives. And I try to, it's been like, I've been doing it for like 2.5 years. It started here in Austin, and now I'm doing it, on Zoom with people from all over, like you, in the Philippines. And and yeah, what's nice about it is, maybe, like a lot, like maybe I'll open it up with the topic, but maybe then 10 seconds later someone else will bring up a different topic, and it doesn't really matter. It's and I guess the meeting I host, it draws people who have already resonated with this message for a while, usually, or resonate with this sort of thing pretty strongly. And I think it's a space for people to talk and express, wherein, most people are just have spent years reading books and listening to other people talk, maybe attending Zoom meetings where they ask other people questions and maybe get corrected by the Zen stick, you know? And that's okay. You know, I'm not really critical of that these days. I think everything has its place, and what I'm drawn to personally is more community and more diversity and of perspectives and characters and stories. And because at the end of the day, I mean, I was talking to Anne earlier, actually. have, have you interviewed Anne
Um, yeah, I would love to invite her too. I think she's. I'm gonna consider a lot of different people because I or like what you said. I like to see different flavors of it, not just the meetings where not but like you said, there's nothing wrong with anything. I
right?
just like to see different perspective other than when, let's say, you ask a question and the person would say there's no one asking a question. It's just appearing. Like, I want a different flavor, a different
That's the
perspective to it.
that's the Zen stick, you know. And that's like, and they call it a Zen stick because traditionally in Zen school, Buddhist schools, people would get hit with the stick um, if they were falling asleep while meditating. Oh, it wakes you up just lightly, like, oh, okay, got to stay awake to meditate for another 24 hours. Um, but yeah, well, what I was thinking of earlier today when I was talking to Anne was everyone who talks about this isn't really. You know, I like putting it that way because, you know, this can't be put in words. You know, the essence of who you are, what life is, you know, these sorts of things. You could describe how the story, you know, gets simpler and subtler, but that's still just the mind creating a story. So whether I say there was a shift or might be a shift, or whether enlightenment exists, which is kind of a big, scary word. I think non duality is kind of like it's an even bigger word. Enlightenment has 4 syllables, non duality has 5, you know? So I think the next word for this is going to,
There. Yeah, earlier you were talking about like not, it's just a 4 syllable, 5 syllable word, and that's just it.
yeah, I mean, well, there's this other idea of, yeah, and I was saying maybe the next word would be 6 syllables or 7, you know, sound even more important. Yeah, but I mean, these words are pointing to things, you know, like non-duality goes back to the Vedas, and the word Advaita means non-duality. It's just the English translation of Advaita. And back in the Vedas, like it's just a way of pointing to what this is, because whoever wrote that book, you know, or those, I mean, it was like probably hundreds of people, at least across hundreds or thousands of years, wrote the Vedas. And I'm definitely not an expert on all of the Vedas. I've only read the Bhagavad Gita a few times and the Upanishads a little bit, but yeah, I'm very familiar with a lot of the Advaita teachings of, I guess, some of Patanjali and Shankara, and mostly Ramana Maharshi, who did a lot of commentary on what they talked about. Because people would go to South India and ask Ramana all these questions. So it's interesting. There's just this rich history of humans trying to put these things into words, and I don't even know where the word enlightenment came from. I would guess it might have come from the Renaissance, but I don't know. It might have predated that. But you know, but enlightenment is just saying to add light to something. That's all it's saying. Saying where there's darkness, you add light. Enlightenment, you know, like confinement means you're confined. You know, refinement means something is refined. Enlightenment means something has had light added to it, so you could see it clearly. But it's all paradoxical. It's all just a pointer, you know, finger pointing towards that sun, you know, and finger pointing to the moon, and although that looks like a sun. I wonder if the sun really looks like that from outer space.
Yeah.
Probably not, but um, yeah, I mean, but I feel like everybody, no matter how you put it, it's never it. It's always pointing to it. It's never it. And in a way, I think everyone who talks about this at all is it's like the message is always being. It's like the message is coming from somewhere that can't be communicated from,
Mm.
and it can only be like, and the message could only be carried by drunken fools who mess it up.
Ah, yes. Like what you said, like I really like what you said. I remember Harvey's analogy yesterday where when you turn on the flashlight, the flashlight is always turning outwards because it's always been the light. So it really doesn't know it's gonna be the flashlight because the light it's the light itself. And it's the way I see enlightenment. It's become $1 million industry where people are seeking it, thinking it's an experience to attain, where in fact it's just simply you. I think enlightenment is a word that was conceptualized in different subjective experience, but I think enlightenment is like what you said earlier. I like that, like remembering. Maybe the way I perceived it is remembering that you are always the light, and how can the light be other than itself? In a way, like what else can it be, or something? And that's just how I see it.
Yeah, yeah, you can't get to where you already always are.
Yeah,
But
but I really, yeah. Go ahead.
the machinery of the brain and the body just goes on. It's a machine created apparently by nature, by from the Big Bang. That's the way these human machines describe it. That there was a Big Bang that happened where all these elemental particles collided into each other, and X amount of time units later, Leonard is in the Philippines talking to Art in Austin, Texas on Zoom. And this is just all a mechanical process playing itself out, in traditional Vedanta, and according to Ramana, there's no choice in anything. Everything is just playing out the only way it can, and and so you are this light, for lack of a better word. I like the word light. Um, yeah, you are that light, but the seeking for the light for the character that doesn't really exist, really, um, that's what the character does in the story. The character seeks the light, and that creates a story. I saw this guru. I listened to this. I did this. I meditated this many years, hours, months. I ate this diet. I, you know, took this drug in this jungle, and all these different things. And it creates a beautiful story. And you look at somebody like Ramana, who's kind of like a unique. Well, yeah, who seems very unique in many ways, but especially for the modern age, his life, just going into a cave for like 10, 15 years in his 20s and early 30s. I mean, that's a pretty wild story. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think he was seeking a story, but he was seeking something. And he didn't speak for over 10 years at all or much, according to record. But eventually he came down from the mountain and he did speak a lot. And he had people around him, and he had friendships, relationships with the animals nearby, and just lots of stories. I mean, I've read all the Ramana books pretty much. And there's a lot of Ramana stories. So I guess I bring that up to say, even if this idea of someone having no story is just impossible. Tony Parsons has a story. Jim Newman has a story. They don't talk about it very often, but they do. And but when this message is being spoken about, as it's often called, a message, it's yeah, the story doesn't matter then so much.
Yeah.
But the story is still but the
Yeah.
story is still very beautiful. Life is beautiful. you know Life is hard, and but that's just a I mean, life is just everything. It's everything that's happening.
Yeah.
And I like, I think kindness and love are important as a human, as a representative of life. The universe is here observing itself, and why would you hurt yourself? So, since we're all from the same source, whether it's the Big Bang or something else, it's important to be kind to people, I think.
Yeah. That's a very good point, I think. And one of the things that kindness and love is non-judgment, I think. Although the mind is always gonna create stories, but if I see it as not invalidating somebody else's story, because it's a story that they value. Like I'm from personal experience, I'm really guilty of like this is my story. Like after I got out of religion, I feel like I'm so woke, and I was secretly judging people from that background, not realizing I just came from that, and I was traumatized by this story of the God who punishes you to hell just because you don't obey his rules. And I didn't realize I was such a judgmental critic, like a Pharisee in a way. I was really so self-righteous, and it took me a long inner work and a lot of healing journey to realize that I'm just as critical as myself still. Like I'm still not free in a way because I'm still judging a lot. And when I realize it's a story I create and everybody's stories are valid, that's when I realize that it's all valid. Like no one's really better or worse than anybody. like recently, or maybe like this age of information created me a lot of judgmental stories about others. I just realized that, like, let's say a political this person supports a political party, and this other person politicals a different one. So I
Yeah.
was like, I was in a state of confusion and judgment also. Like I like what I told you the other day. I feel like I'm in a circle, and every information is out there, and I don't know who to follow and what to believe anymore. So I was like, well, that's what 2020 gave me. The reality that it's all a story. It's just accepting the story as it is.
Yeah, there's no choice. I mean, well, accepting as it is accepting, what is, that there isn't a choice for. Um, in the 12-step programs, they have this prayer called the Serenity Prayer, to ask, um, I forget how it goes exactly, but it's like the strength to change what you can, the acceptance to accept what you can't change, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Yes.
And so, if I can choose to, have my hand up or down, seems like that's a choice. I could choose to eat something healthier or less healthy. Seems like that's a choice. And so, as long as it seems like a choice, I don't think there's any problem with just feeling that way about it. If some supercomputer one day can prove that nothing is a choice and everything is, deterministic through brain neurons and energy waves and who knows what else, you know. Um, yeah, who knows the description? We can only perceive things as humans through the language we've been taught, and the language, that's really it. Like UG Krishnamurti said, this isn't my mind, this is the world's mind, you know? And yeah, so yeah, that acceptance is where the traveling lighter comes from, as Paul Hedderman says, I and also seeing that it's not really you, um, which it sounds like disassociation to say that this body is not me and this personality is not me, but and Thich Nhat Hanh or Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist speaker, he says he has this beautiful word of interbeing, where he says nothing exists on its own. You can't have the ground without the sky. We talk about people as if they're separate, but actually everything in the world is interconnected.
I love that. I don't think any message can even top what you said. Like this, everything is connected. I that like if somebody asks me like after seeking what have I gotten, I really don't know. But if there's some message close to it, it's that everything is connected, that nothing separate exists in a way. That for me could be the highest teaching, because if you think there's no separation, then what's the problem, right? Then what is really the problem if everything is connected?
Yeah, but it's interesting. Yeah, at the when you zoom out all the way, it's just a hole, and there's no separation. And when you zoom in to these middle levels, I think when you zoom in all the way, there's nothing. When you zoom out, it's like you zoom in all the way, it's nothing. You zoom out all the way, it's everything. Because if you zoom in far enough, there's just emptiness. There's just particles coming in and out of existence, at seemingly random rates. But I mean, maybe they'll zoom in even further one day somehow and find that there's more. It's just everything is a dancing with everything, and that dance, is beautiful and important and can be tragic. And from the relative levels, it has everything that life has to offer. And the body tries to take care of itself, like a tree seeks the sunlight. It's just what it does. So, like our bodies need food and water and shelter and, and friends, romance, maybe, probably, and for most of us. And so the whole thing is, and then concerns about politics and the world and, you know, everything going on. That's all just normal. I mean, for lack of a better word, it's like if a meteor was coming out of nowhere and everyone knew we were going to die in like a day, the whole planet was going to die, or all the humans, most 90% of us would die, maybe. Like everyone would just go nuts, and that would be normal. It'd be a very abnormal event, but the reaction to it would be totally normal and natural, and at the same time, there could be a amazing technological breakthrough that makes life better for everyone, and everyone would be happier, and that would be normal. But it's just, yeah, I feel like I'm not even saying anything, because I'm really not. I'm just saying that everything happens as it happens, and it's all just natural. But and there's this dance between. I feel like there's a yin yang thing of, you could say the yin side of things is acceptance. Everything is as it is. The yang side is, but it could be better, and they're both right. You know, like if you haven't eaten and you need to, then it's better to eat. And so that yang force leading to that. And so it's better for things like child mortality rates to be lower. It's better for illness to be less for human bodies. I mean, these are just better things from a human perspective, and that is valid because that is also just part of life, and that's natural too. And there is no ultimate truth. It's not there's no ultimate good or evil for humans, but there also isn't it I also just want to say I don't think it's absolutely true that good and evil don't exist, or that sometimes I've noticed that some people can sort of get a little stuck at the non-dual level of looking at things, it seems to me. And and that's okay. But I mean, I imagine a lot of the people who speak about non-duality from a very direct level, or if you want to call it that. I mean, I don't know what else to call it. But people on a public forum like this that are just sharing their perspective of emptiness and nothing and happening to anyone, this is a beautiful message because it frees people from this feeling of needing to get somewhere that doesn't exist. And and it makes them travel lighter if they as they accept this, as they try it out for themselves and just see what they notice, I guess. But at the same time, it could be taken a different way, where you see someone on a podium talking about how nothing exists for anyone and there's no one there, nothing happening, and it doesn't honor the actual human existence. And some people misinterpret that and think, oh, that person's at a higher level than me. They're at a they're in a different state where nothing exists, and they don't have problems with money or relationships or health. You know, like even though
Mm.
they don't say that, some people assume that. And that's the thing. I think for me, I like to see everything, be honored. I like to see, like I said, a diversity of perspectives. So I love hearing people talk from this perspective of the absolute that isn't a perspective. And then I also like hearing people just tell their mundane stories about getting groceries, you know, and making food, and what their sleep is like and what their relationship is like. Because the stories are beautiful, and life is just in everything. It's not absent, in the story or in the seeking. The
Mhm.
seek the seeking is totally fine.
There, you stop for a while. There, it's okay now. I really love that. Like in the story in the grocery or the seeking story, it's still life, very awake as it, because to me this Leonard is drawn to the story is amazing where, let's say in religion, you go to a priest, the priest will tell you you're born of sin. You go confess. When this Leonard goes to a healer or or whatever people call it, everybody will say you have a past life karma, you're such a wicked soul in the past. And I rarely haven't been to people who would say you're perfect exactly as you are. And when I went to non-duality, that's where I met people who embrace me just as I am. But also there's a catch where this Leonard tends to put the the people on the pedestal where, oh, that's a state where a shift can happen, or that's a state where the me's gonna drop. Even though paradoxically none of them would say they're special, people will say there's no specialness to it. But but still the participants maybe because I had this notion that the more I attend Zooms, the more the me is gonna drop, which seems like a process, but in a way, I think there's really no purpose to it but just accepting what it is. Like when I attend your Zoom meetings, I always feel like a different vibe to it. But I always felt the acceptance. Like I know whatever I share is gonna be accepted. It's not gonna be invalidated or shunned. It's gonna be accepted, and that's the beauty of it, I guess, in attending the Zooms because it's like telling your story without anybody shunning you away from whatever story you tell. It's all gonna be embraced. Yeah, that's just how I see it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's funny because like whichever direction something goes in, there's always going to need to be a pivot somewhere. You know, there's always a feeling for, you know, the opposite, you know, to add flavor, to add color. And you can't know how what a day is without knowing what the night is. You can't feel happy if you feel unless you feel sad, you know. So it's there's just no right way to put this. There's no right way to talk about it. And everyone is going to experience life uniquely because they have a different body. And we can only communicate with the body, that's pretty clear, you know, until technology finds a way to turn our brain into code or something. And then maybe 200 years from now, Zoom podcasts and YouTube videos will happen like this, you know, in the cloud from beings that exist in the cloud, you know. I mean, who knows? Life is always changing. You know, it changed from a sponge to a fish to a reptile to a monkey to us here on Zoom. So who knows where it goes from here, you know? And so I think we're just communicating the only way we can, and we're experiencing the only thing we can experience in the moment. And that's always changing, you know? Like Jim Newman has talked about how, you know, he had his shift, you know, and or whatever, I don't know what he calls it, but he began speaking about this just like Tony Parsons. You know, he was Tony Parsons' cameraman before that, and then he started speaking around Europe, I guess. And then at some point after that, Jim Newman had another realization of some sort after that, and which is really interesting to me because he is someone who doesn't talk about stages or levels, obviously, you know, and he wouldn't even put it that way, but he said that there was something else that left, which was this expectation for this desire to be happy, or like a thought that happiness would change anything. I forget how he puts it, but it was something in his mind, in his brain, about happiness that just went away, where that felt, yeah, yeah, that. And so nothing is static, and no one perspective or person can really put this correctly. At the same time, if someone's happy with whatever they're doing, then that's great. You know, if they're not really seeking, or if they're seeking in one specific way, then that's fine. It's all okay. And in another light, if it's not okay, let's say if it's not okay, let's say if you're seeking in a way that's not good for you, like you're expecting a shift and you're doing a certain practice to try to get there, and you're listening to all these videos and you're trying to get there, and let's say that's bad for some reason, you know, you still, it's still just what's happening. So, and if you tell someone it's bad, it's not going to make them stop usually. So yeah, I
Yes.
don't know. You just can't land anywhere with this. You know, because for some people they'll say, "Whoa, I had this shift." For other people, they'll say, "I never had a shift, but I'm fine." And you get every variation under the sun with that.
Yeah. I don't know. I Because I wanted really to ask about you about what I usually ask in Zoom meetings, like maybe your perspective on this. And we all know it's just also the expression of life, but There's a lot of story, collective story about angels, extraterrestrials, or other dimensional beings. And for some odd reason, it's either me or somebody would ask it every time I attend some Zoom meetings, because this is the age of information. It's out there, and I also have put a specialness to it, which is really not wrong. And if people watching this put specialness to it, it is. But to me, I felt kind of, this is just from personal experience. I felt kind of trapped. Like I thought so well that it was the absolute. Like it's the goal to how human should be, to become the angel or the ET or the seventh 32nd dimension, whatever. It's really a beautiful story in a way. But
Yeah.
to me, I felt trapped in some at some point. Like I thought, and I felt judgmental of people who don't know it. That's how some spiritual circles call them sheep when they don't know what's going on. And I don't really feel good about that. I feel like some circles created a cult out of it. Not all. It's just some of it. Some groups I belong to has a lot of conceptualized ideas. But what about yours? What is your take on that?
Well, I think I think humans are tribal by nature, by genetically. You know, mammals are mostly tribal. Humans are mammals. We're very tribal, and a cult is just another word for a tribe, really. That is kind of derogatory. It has like a lot of fear and danger attached to it. Usually, is what people mean by it. Because of course there have been cults where people all committed mass suicide or did other really bad things. And there's also something kind of scary or strange about people who separate themselves from the rest of society. Um, yeah. So there, gosh, I mean, a simple answer to what you're saying is, I guess I just see it all as what's happening. You know, it's all just what's happening. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the Tony answer, except that's all what that's this is all what's happening apparently. You know, because it's really nothing happening is this apparently. But yeah, but I mean, for me personally, with my story, I mean, I've gone in and out of different religions and groups, and you know, it's um, it's really interesting. You know, it's like, I mean, humanity is just a part of life, just doing what it does, and I'm a very optimistic person. My personality, I'm just wired that way for whatever reason. I mean, I feel very deeply about things. I'm very I'm like an empath or something like that. You know, my personality has the danger of being codependent towards narcissistic types. This is all the story and layers of description about, you know, this body mind, Art PINSOF. But yeah, and I like all of I've studied and practiced a lot of different mystical things over the years, and some of it I still do, like on occasion. Like I like working with energy. I like doing tarot readings and I Ching readings. I like I don't know. I stay pretty open. I never had much thoughts. Yeah, angels, alien. You asked about angels, aliens, and like different levels of awakening, basically. And around those topics, I haven't resonated too much with angels, but I like the idea. I mean, I'm open to the idea that we have guardian angels and there's different disembodied spirits doing things. I'm open to that possibility. Aliens, I think I'm just open. I'm open to possibilities. You know, I'm also very you know, I like evidence based reasoning. You know, and the way, so I don't like to really believe in anything I can't prove too much if it has potential to do me harm, basically, because the problem with a lot of beliefs is that they can put us down rabbit holes where, like you were saying, where you wind up judging other people, or you wind up judging yourself, or you wind up being afraid of some apocalypse because somebody said that the year 2012 was going to end in, or 2022, or it's just that happens every 3 years. There's another date where the world's supposed to end, and some channeled alien entity, says it on YouTube, and or in religions, it's just that's as old as time. That's just a human fear. It's like humans, process their fears in many different ways. Like technology is the reason why we're talking across the planet, and we both might not even be alive if not for technology. Like the infant mortality rate was unimaginable just like 200, 150, 100 years ago in most of the world, and now it's gone way down because of modern medicine. So um so it's this is all just the story. So the story's pretty complicated and crazy, and it's going to get more complicated and crazy because that's just what life is. Life is diversity, complexity, expansion. The universe is apparently expanding, like not just moving out from its Big Bang central point, but also the space time itself is expanding, is what scientists think. So it's like everything in life is always growing, changing, mutating, trying new things, and always trying to make things better. It's just what life does. Life tries to make things better. So our human body minds do that, and it's natural. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with trying to get somewhere. But yeah, this message is about just relaxing as well, and um, noticing that all of that is just fine as it is.
Yeah. You actually covered a lot of a lot of things that dissolve my questions. Yeah, literally I have like list of questions I wanted to ask, but I think midway you were able to like, oh, that was covered. Oh, that was covered.
Awesome.
Yeah, maybe the last thing I was meaning to ask is, how do you see death, or are you still afraid of it? Because to me sometimes it's still the fear of the unknown. Because I really don't know what's gonna happen after. All I really don't really I don't know what's on the other side, or is there another side, or maybe I can just buy into the afterlife stories of near death experiences, which is really hopeful that it's all blissful. But there are also stories of not blissful stories about it. So I don't know what how do you see it? How do you see death of the physical body maybe?
I just don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't think anybody knows.
Yeah, do you maybe you're how do you feel about it maybe in the human
Right,
perspective?
right. I mean, um, yeah. Well, I had this interesting kind of like samadhi experience like 2 years ago, and the fear of the death of my body was like one of the things that went away like during that experience, and which lasted about 5 or 6 hours or something. And then like a month later, like something happened where I thought maybe I was about to die, and then I was afraid of death, and I was like, oh, what does this mean? Like I wasn't afraid for that period of time, and I saw everything's clear, and now it's like I'm in this pain. I feel like maybe I'm gonna die, but it's all just life. It's not really, we're not the one who's afraid or not afraid of death. That's just the body living itself, doing itself. And over time, I think the character travels lighter, things get softer, the grip on things gets looser. There isn't any strong feeling of death for me right now, but like I said, if we found out a meteor was going to hit the Earth, in a day or an hour, we were all going to die. I mean, it would be scary. and I probably would be afraid to die. My brain would just process it and then accept it, in whatever state. I mean, people die all the time. I'm just like, I mean, yeah, I'm totally open to the possibility of reincarnation. Um, who knows? I don't know, but it doesn't really matter to me too much. Um, about 10 years ago, I made this. I think I made a prayer, or where I wanted to be like fully spiritually finished in this life, and then my whole life started falling apart, like, and all these crazy things started happening, and which weren't even spiritual, just like drama and painful and all this stuff. And it was like it was like so many parts of my life just got ripped away from me. And then there was a death that happened over a course of years. There was a death of a lot of different things that I thought I was. And so now I don't think I'm this body, you know. Maybe this body thinks it's, all that exists, but this body also thinks that life is interconnected and a whole, and there's nothing at the bottom of it, and there's love throughout all of it. And so there's no words to really answer questions this deep. There's just, this moment. These are just ideas we're talking about of, oh, death. That might happen one day. But it will happen one day. But, ooh, it's a beautiful question. It's like all these questions about life. What is the meaning of life? What is death? And, is there a shift? All of these deepest questions, I feel like they're like Zen koans, really, They're like Ramana advising people to ask, who am I? He didn't want people to get an answer. He just knew that that was a question that worked for him to take him out of his mind. It's like pouring like Coca-Cola on a circuit board. It just fries the whole circuitry, and there's freedom in that somehow. There's freedom when the story that's gripped so tightly is just loosened. But the story goes on. The circuit board doesn't really get fried. Like, it just keeps trying to grab onto the next thing. Like, yeah. Yeah, I want to say, yeah, I don't think about death too often, and sometimes I do, but to me that's just another human thing. It's like, am I hungry? Yeah. Oh, that food, did I get food poisoning? I don't know, we'll find out. Like, it's just something that happens. Like, you get sick, you get hurt, everyone's gonna die and have to deal with that at some point. Or it could happen very suddenly in your sleep and you wouldn't. I mean, it's just, life is just all of it. It's all just the dance of life. And it's just beautiful, and the most tragic things imaginable get turned into beautiful songs and movies. So it's amazing. Life is just a beautiful mystery that's endlessly, just doing everything it does.
Yeah. I don't know. There's a lot of beautiful things you just said that really cannot be, compared with any word. It's just, I'm really grateful you accepted the invite. And yeah, we're gonna put the link to maybe your Facebook if they want to join the weekly Zoom meetings you conduct.
Yeah, and you could put my email in there too for people who aren't on Facebook. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking, like, do you also have a YouTube channel that people can like visit?
Not yet, but I will soon. And actually, I think as soon as next week, I may have some videos up on this YouTube channel, just like you're doing for nothing. I'm supposed to interview a couple people in the next couple weeks, so. But I will have my own YouTube coming up soon. I think I'm starting a podcast that's called Ocean to Ocean, where it's conversations like this, where it's like we're both the ocean. It's funny how there's 7 oceans, but it's all interconnected on the planet. Like they're not really separate. And yeah, I love talking to you, Leonard. Yeah, I'm happy to know you. You're a really cool guy.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much. It's really a fun conversation as always.
Thank you, Leonard.